You're listening to episode 717 of a VerySpatial podcast, July 9th or 11th, 2023. Hello and welcome to a VerySpatial podcast. I'm Jesse.
I'm Sue.
I'm Barb.
And this is Frank.
And this week we're going to talk about something eventually. We don't know what it is yet. We're going to get there and figure it out. But first we have some newses. First one, Massachusetts has a law going through its legislature currently. And actually, I haven't checked on this in the last day to see where it might be, but they are proposing what they're calling the Location Shield Act, which will basically ban law enforcement from getting location-based information from commercial vendors. So basically, it would require them to get a warrant like any other, what is that, Fourth Amendment requirement. So, you know, just like if you were doing wiretaps or searching someone's home or something like that, you'd have to have a warrant. So interesting to see that we have a push for that in a legislature. And of course, I'm sure that if this goes through, that we'll begin to see some of this playing out in other states. But there's also been discussions of these types of things at the FCC level as well, but haven't come to fruition there.
Yeah, one of the key things for this is that it wants to bar tech companies and data vendors from selling data to third parties. So that has location. So, I mean, that's a little bit broader, the example, but it's, again, right now there's very little to actually stop any of that. So
this is obviously a very U.S.-centric thing because in the EU, there's a lot more controls over things like location. So it's not like this is unheard of, you know, within this new technology. And it's kind of an interesting, it's one of those areas that I think that as geospatial experts and geospatial technology advocates, we don't think about this affects that versus the other thing. This really gets back to some of the Dobbs decision on Roe v. Wade. And in a really weird way, you wouldn't think, oh, that's going to be important. But some of this is coming about because of a post-Dobbs world and tracking people and things like that, wanting to put protections in it. But these things do have a way of kind of bringing issues to the head. Because like Jesse said, the FCC has been kicking this around much in response to some of the things that Europe has done for years now about location-based data and saying, okay, there's some inherent expectations of privacy. You've got to ask permissions for these things. You can't just have it. And I'm not sure that really we'd have seen something like this happen in a pre-Dobbs world in the United States. So this really did push it to the fore very rapidly. And those type of things, just like in technology, these wild swings within policy that can happen, you know, on a weird flip that you wouldn't necessarily see. So I suspect that we're going to see, if this takes off, if this gets through, and when this is advocated by the ACLU and a lot of progressive groups in the United States, that many other states may pick up this flag as well. So it will be really interesting how this shakes out nationwide, since we'll have this, I think, an uneven landscape.
Next up in the news, another launch. So lots of launches this summer. This time around, India has launched and successfully integrated the 9th NavIC satellite. So again, NavIC is India's regional constellation that they were trying to push on various device manufacturers, Google and Apple, of course, specifically, to be adopted. So yeah, it's kind of continuing to grow. And
yes, as others, once again, a common topic, right, is the reliance on GPS and how, first of all, it has its own issues, but the fact that many places are like, we don't want to have to rely on that. So regional constellations like this can both supplement, but also, if need be, take over for those areas.
And not everybody wants to do a global system. So, you know, we have GLONASS, we have Galileo, we have BeiDou, that they chose, you know, those countries chose to do global systems. But sometimes you just want to do something for your own backyard. So would that be FIMBY, for my backyard?
I don't know. I don't know if there is a term for that, but
Yeah,
Well,
I think there should be one. Normally it's grassroots, but this wouldn't be grassroots, and it's not NIMBY. I don't know the opposite of NIMBY.
Well, FIMBY would be for in my backyard. So
Yeah.
you know,
I'm not saying it's perfect. I just threw something out there.
yes.
needs to be something.
And the last, but definitely not least for this week.
That's right. So last up in the news, and this one, by the way, I've not seen the Barbie movie. I guess it's out in the U.S.
It comes out on the 21st, so it's
it's
still
not out
another
even
10
yet,
days.
but we've seen some trailers and stuff. But an interesting little, well, not little, I guess, in places where these types of things are issues, but apparently Vietnam is going to ban or has banned at this point. I know it was going before their cinema board, but they banned commercial screenings of Barbie because of a map that's in there. And they're asserting that the map, and I think it's like it's not actually like a photograph or anything like that or that kind of map. It's just sort of a, as the producers called it or whoever, that's like more of a hand-drawn cartoony kind of thing. But Vietnam says that it essentially depicts the 9-dash line, right, which is a long time point of contention over territorial claims in the South China Sea. And I think the Philippines has also raised some objections about it as well. But it just kind of goes to show that you always have to be aware. There have been a number of TV shows and movies that have been prevented from being shown in places because they have chosen to use maps that are showing things that are not agreed upon or controversial. And awareness, it goes back to the whole idea, awareness of what your visual is actually showing to people.
Yeah, when I saw this, Sue, I thought when this has happened often enough, there must be like an advisory board. I was thinking there might be people there to walk people through this because it is a decision they have to make. What map are they going to show and what are they trying to communicate? But also, I'd be really interested to hear a panel like that at one of the geography conferences from people within the industry about how those decisions are made or not made, because you're seeing this more and more often as a point of contention in the news.
Well, I think in this case, probably it has as much to do with the visual where we use dotted lines to show. And I think I don't know that much about the plot of the movie, of the Barbie movie, but like how we use dotted lines to kind of show a journey. And of course, that dashed line is used in the case of maps that in this case show the 9-dash line, or there was an earlier version. So yeah, you're right. It's not just necessarily what territories it might be showing, but also the use of symbology in maps, right? What means one thing to somebody might mean something different to someone else if there's not a consistent map language or legend language in there. So yeah, it probably comes up more often than you think. And sometimes, we see those types of things that aren't necessarily controversial, but you're just like, are you aware that you're just not showing an accurate picture of the world right now? Right? At all the maps I still see reproduced and out there in the public that are made new, that are still showing Sudan, and they don't show the new country of South Sudan, or some stuff like that. So we definitely still see those types of things happening.
It's almost like they need a map bank to draw from that's updated.
Like an atlas? I read one item. My comment actually was, yeah, it's, I don't think they have that in any company. Certainly not Esri. Oh, no, we didn't during the UC. Sorry. Anyway, but the comment that one of the, when the news, I think it's one response from the filmmaker was it was supposed to be a map as depicted from a child's imagination.
Yeah, I think I saw that comment. Yeah.
That was their defense. And I was like, well, it's not I get where they're coming from, and it's not a terrible defense, but also, like going too far into sort of human geography stuff. It's like, well, but you're a human interpreting the child's interpretation. You can see where the layers get complicated, and then you have to start thinking to yourself, it's a Barbie movie. I've gone too deep.
Well, I think there's also the fact that they're just like with voiceovers and things like that. There is nothing stopping them from just editing that part of the graphic in the movie and re-rendering that section.
Yeah, I mean,
so who knows if that'll happen or not.
They do that for labels for Taiwan and stuff like that. So in China releases.
Yeah.
So it's not like it's unprecedented. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. But I mean, like, not to belabor what, I'm sure the Barbie movie is awesome, whatever, but not to belabor kind of this thing too. But, some of these types of issues that we've talked about in the past, right? It's now that it's a global world and global consumption of media. And so, again, different people come at things from different perspectives, different historical, worldviews and stuff. And so I think that again, a lot of these just never enter people's minds that's an issue, that it matters though to others, and that visual may end up being seen by people for whom it is actually, a big enough deal. So
Remember, it's a store of information and it's a communicator of knowledge. So what are you communicating?
So Frank brought up the elephant in the room, I guess. So we can't not talk about the Esri UC. So I don't know. I mean, is there anything that anybody wanted to highlight from this year's?
Still ongoing, right?
Yeah, but I mean, most of the big things that we generally talk about are talked about in the UC as little kind of tidbits of here's some information. Now, I've only watched the first session. I haven't watched the second or the afternoon sessions yet from the first day.
I still haven't caught up with that. The only thing I saw that I'm going to investigate more, or maybe you guys have seen, is the beta of Atlas. I'm still trying to figure out what that is.
It's basically a way to create atlases from your existing ArcGIS Online data. So it's kind of a template more than it is a separate piece of...
Because it mentioned groups and working with groups. I'm like, well, how does that fit into it? So I have to investigate that one more.
I mean, ArcGIS Online, and again, they do keep pushing this. One of the amusing statements of Jack's portion of the speech was not that ArcGIS Pro is a desktop application, but that is a desktop application, though it's really more of a thick client, I think is essentially the quote, but might be one or two words off. But it's just kind of real strong push towards online with the whole quote unquote modern GIS that they're generally pushing overall.
Yeah, but this reminds me of working with WordPress, to be honest with you. I know that's going to be a weird analogy, but you could do a lot of cool things with the interface to a point, but at some point you had to, get dirty to get things to do what you wanted to do. I spent a bunch of time the last 2 weeks with community analyst and business analyst on the online version, and it's cool. There's lots of neat things there. But the second that I was like, oh, cool, now I want to take that and I want to mix it with this, got to go to the desktop client. I got to go to Pro to do any sort of unusual analysis or anything like that. And I get what they're saying, but at the same token, you put the power in the thick client, and so people think about that as the real tool, whether you intend it to or not. And that's, I think, a real problem with their model. And I understand the push and pull. Like, how do you tell all these users that you've been doing ArcGIS forever and a day? They're used to firing up a desktop application, and they've got workflows and experiences with workflows to use that to say, oh yeah, just kind of check it, and there's an online tool that does all that. And they go, no, I don't believe you. So I get that there's that.
And there's not. There's a lot of the tool set, the toolbox, and various things that aren't in ArcGIS Online yet. I'm not saying they won't be there, but they're not there yet.
Yeah, but the not there yet refrain has been going on. How long have they been pushing this as the sort of narrative, as Arc Pro is the, not necessarily thick client, but basically that concept?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was why it was built.
5 years, something like that?
Yeah. I mean, version whatever, whether, I don't even remember if it started with 1 or if it started below 1, but basically that was where they created that ArcGIS Online tie-in, and they eventually added that to ArcMap. But, it is why ArcGIS Pro was built, was to be this receptacle to this massive font of knowledge / data sets that is ArcGIS Online. And I don't disagree with that, but I don't think that ArcGIS Online is everyone's destination still.
Well, yeah, it is, but when I see these things too, but I think that it comes back to questions that, the last big push we had for online, when everybody was rolling out their online mapping, including remote sensing companies and stuff, and all these things, is that there's still, and here Jesse and I are dealing with this too. There's still plenty of people in this world that aren't ready yet, and are going to get forced into potentially a situation where they don't have the infrastructure, because this still comes back to that question. This is great for those people who have high-speed internet that's reasonably reliable, but that really does leave out a fair number of people, and not just, if you're a global company, it's not just here in the U.S., it's elsewhere, and that's a backbone of this whole concept. And if you've ever sat in a room with 20 people and frustrated because you've maxed out your pipe and you can't literally do the simplest things to pull data back and forth, and that's only like less than a year ago, right? That's still something that I just think everybody dodges that part of the question. I mean, and we ask the question then, do you think high-speed internet is a crucial infrastructure that needs to be, supported and advocated for? I still think that's not directly answered. And to have everything increasingly relying on that just does, in fact, make it tough for those that can't keep up or haven't gotten there yet.
I also think that this is turning into a big, RGS line sucks type of podcast. But I do believe that some of the, Jesse said something I think was very telling there, is this great cornucopia of amazing data they have out there on RGS Online, which is totally true. There's an astounding amount of data out there. But we all know that's only one of the 5 legs, the traditional legs for GIS, right? Data. And the other pieces feel lacking, in my opinion. So if you go to the little box of dots on RGS Online and hit the download, the down thing menu comes down and it shows you 20, 30 things. And, you have to ask the question, okay, I want to know this. Is that community analyst? Is that business analyst? Is that an insights? Am I making a dashboard? What am I doing here? I'm just, trying to figure out how many people between this age and that age live within 50 miles of here. That's a relatively simple question to ask, but how you go about answering it is a whole different, for me at least, it's a whole different mindset to think about how do I answer that using ArcGIS Online versus how do I answer it, which I can do relatively easy in the desktop.
I'm so glad that you said that, because sometimes I feel like I'm still learning. And so when I've signed up for the UC virtually, and a lot of the sessions are going over each of those things that's in the drop-down menu. And I was like, well, I really hope there's going to be a glossary and a flow chart and something that helps me determine what I need and where I need to go. ESR is very good with training, I found, like step by step, but it's hard sometimes to figure out what's the tool that I need, or what's the widget. Or
what do I need to be trained on?
Yeah, what do I need to be trained on? Or am I using like a hammer when I should be using a screwdriver or something like that? Like, have I totally missed the tool that I'm supposed to use for this spatial question? And so it's always good when you hear from other people that they feel that same way. So yeah, I was checking off. I was going through all the sessions I wanted to attend virtually, which were mostly all going through all the new things coming up. And I was like, well, can I just heart every single one of these and then spend all week back to back reviewing what's going on, which I think is what some people are doing. I have friends that are there and, everyone's wearing all the buttons. They're like, all these sessions I'm going to, because, for a lot of people, like you said, the modern GIS, everyone's trying to get on that edge or learn. But there are going to be a lot of people that don't have that opportunity or don't realize that they need it, even though people are saying, well, there's been a lot of warnings. You've had time to prepare. But we know how people prepare for conferences themselves. 2 weeks before, you're like, oh, yeah, I did sign up for that.
Well, and again, some of it is your capabilities as well as your desires. And so whether that's, again, the things that you have at your disposal in terms of hardware and all that kind of stuff. But also, I think and maybe not, today is probably not the way to talk about that, but I mean, it goes back to education too. Like you say, like, how do I know which thing to do? That's still a crucial part of why getting some kind of, in addition to training on software, and this wouldn't be just GIS as anything, right? But also the chance to have a class or something where somebody says, like, here's a problem, and here is a way to approach it. Because there's always more than one way to approach it, but here's a way where you can say, right, if somebody comes to me from the city council and says, I'd like to know, what's up with the relationship between crime. Well, this is like a classic exercise, right? Relationship between proximity to bars and I don't know, disorderly conduct calls for the police, right? I mean, like, what types of tools, how you approach that. And that's as value. And I tell this to students all the time. That's actually more valuable necessarily than just a step-by-step on how to learn how to use the software. Because when you go to solve that problem or something similar, you have to say, all right, what are the things I need to break down? As you were saying, Frank, right, to get from point A to point whatever I need to be at, point Z, what's in between. And that's more than just simply using software. That's broader things. But anyway, that's more, some of those questions. But while I also think there's lots of amazing things that are available, I just am often working with people that really can't utilize the sort of modern online heavy model yet for GIS. For lots of reasons, they're just not there yet.
So I think to go back to Frank's 5 parts of GIS, I think one that ArcGIS Online does support very well is people. And, it's oftentimes one of the ignored portions of the 5, one of the easily forgotten of the 5. But it does give more people access. And one of the things that I think, I haven't looked at it yet, but there was a big kind of highlight during the opening keynote was the fact that basically ArcGIS Online is integrated now into Office 365. And I haven't necessarily... I generally use the desktop apps for Office, and I haven't really tried to do maps in the online version. So it's something I'm going to have to go and take a look at now because
it's okay.
It's another level of they're getting this information out there. So one, we have all this data that a lot of people can get to. Then within our organizations, we can readily let other people besides the GIS people have access to data, and then we can let our communities share information with us. So I think, we are getting the tools all the way from Esri specific all the way out to other connections with Autodesk and Microsoft that allow us to have more people in the conversations.
If you get the license. So this is my big, I'm trying not to get too much of a tangent on this, but the institution I'm at right now, we've got a problem with our Microsoft licensing so that, like a lot of, and I do not know Microsoft licensing well enough to make sure that I'm saying the exact right terms, but there are basically like a lot of these enterprise level, high level, big systems is you've got the notion of a consumer user, a creator user, an administrative user, there's different types of users. And the more creating you can do, the more development, maybe that's not the right word, you can do, the more expensive the license. They've got a lot of weird stuff with Microsoft so that there's an awful lot of things that weirdly you can make reports, but you can't view the reports unless you're like at a higher level, which is bizarre. And then you add that into, Esri's got this same type of paradigm, right? You've got the users and the viewers and all that stuff like that. And it makes a lot of sense. But when you add it into theirs, I find that it's just so much easier just to give an ArcGIS Online the license and just look at it there. So
No, I'm not arguing for the Microsoft 365 by any means. I'm just saying that
it's cool. I think the to make a pop culture reference that's a bit dated, the reality of Portland doesn't meet the expectation of Portland. It's a Portland, India reference. But anyway, how it ought to work and how you can envision it should work and where it would be great isn't as good as it. What I'm not finding it as productive as I want it to be, because like we have ArcGIS Online for Power BI, sorta, kind of does maps, especially if you just want dots. It works great, but I'll try not to give too much of a tangent on that.
But we're not the. It's the issue I've had with ArcGIS for Office. It's the issue I've had with ArcGIS for Adobe. Is that I'm not the target audience for that, because I would rather just go down and get into the nuts and bolts, do what I need to do in the GIS, and then take that product out to Photoshop or Illustrator or whatever I want to edit in, as opposed to bringing in a couple of layers from ArcGIS Online and printing them up in Photoshop. So I'm just not that person. I'd rather do it in the GIS. So I see what you're saying, because it's just I will never be the target audience for those products.
Well, the issue I'm running into is that the target audience for those products start turning around and saying, what do you need the GIS for? I have that. It's the age old, I can make a map. What's the problem? That's not the power of GIS, to be able to put out a map, I can put a bunch of dots on a map. That's terrific. You're absolutely right. You put that into ArcGIS for Excel, boom, knock it out, you're done. But that's not what the types of problems or questions that can be addressed or answered with GIS. One of the things that I find a little bit of a challenge in this industry, and it's been like this in many other industries, so it's not unique to GIS, but that you give people a little bit of capability, they think that it's basically everything that you need to ever do, and then it's fine. And you're like, well, no, you still have a need for the big one, the big thing in the back corner that does a lot of complicated stuff that still has utility, it has value. And part of the challenge that we as an industry have is educating people that ArcGIS Online for Photoshop or whatever isn't the end all be all map making. There's other stuff out there.
That doesn't even have anything to do with Esri even. So right, exactly.
So it's just that's some of my frustration with the Microsoft licenses, because we have people on campus now who can do things that I just go, yeah, you can do them, but there's a lot more you could be doing. We don't need to do any of that. Yeah, actually you do.
You should be doing it. You don't have to, but you really should.
Yeah, you really ought to.
And there'll be people who, when you show it to them, will go, why didn't you? And then you'll come back to the GIS people and go, what do they mean?
And I think this is related. What I got out of the UC the past 2 days so far, I think, is the bigger thing out of it was in the beginning at the plenary when Jack Dangerman was doing his call to say, before we get to the fun stuff, before we get to what's new, we're at a critical point where everyone needs to be doing what they do and communicating to the people they work with and the public about, the things we've talked about before on this podcast. And if you work in sustainability, what you work with. And I think everyone in every field touches on sustainability in some way if you're doing geospatial analysis, which is the problems coming up that we know are critical. And he was basically
climate change. She's talking about climate change, folks.
But not just that, just everything. It's what he's done in his life work, which is conservation, which is, mitigating climate change, which is responding to issues in the environment and the human physical interactions and our impact. And he used talked about the Anthropocene, talked about here's the impact we've had up till now, here's what we've done, and then here's what we need to do. It was almost like he was trying to get everyone in the room. You need that second wind. When you work in those areas, you need someone to say, hey, what you're doing is good. It's hard, but we really need you to keep doing it and do it faster. I almost felt like he wanted everyone to just get up and leave and start producing answers right now, is what it felt like. So I both felt that, having been to other plenaries where he's talked, but not as heartfelt and strongly about that. But I also felt there is a lot of pressure on the people in this work in this area. And I wondered, they're going to be at the UC going, okay, what can I do? And like you've been talking about, well, how do we educate people? How do we talk to them? How do we get them to use the tools that could help them to come up with answers?
That's a big question. Obviously,
it's rhetorical, but I did appreciate him giving a second wind to people that work in the area and in the field. Sometimes you need to hear that what you're doing is important. Keep doing it, and you're doing a good job.
Especially with the massive amount of, I think inarguably connected to climate issues of weather and events that are happening in the United States just in the last 6 weeks, 8 weeks or something like that alone. You've got kind of historic flooding in Vermont going on literally as we're recording this. We got the hottest temperature in the entire recorded in the world happened the 3rd of July, and luckily that didn't get replicated again until the 4th of July. Oh, was it? Oh, good Lord.
Don't forget about the 5th.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and the 5th. Yeah. So, I mean, I
So
feel
that was
for
the
you people
hottest
down-
average temperature.
Yeah, I feel for you people down in Florida and Texas, and are you guys getting hit by that heat wave over in South
Not
Carolina?
as bad.
Yeah,
I don't
mean,
know. It's pretty hot today.
I'm not saying it's not hot. I'm just saying that
But not
whenever
the
I was
hottest.
growing up,
Yeah.
I do have to admit, I remember more days at 98 to 100, but we're not quite to that time of year yet. We still have a couple of weeks before we should be hitting that.
you got like 4 weeks, and then you're gonna start hitting that, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, hopefully not.
Yeah,
Fingers crossed.
And Sue, I was thinking that speaks to what you were saying, that if that's the goal, if that's the impact, if that's the change, then we need to make sure that it's usable and available to everyone, that the people that need it have access to it, and that it doesn't just rely on high-speed broadband that a lot of people don't have in the world, at least not yet, unless we make a huge push for that.
Let's see. Other things coming out of the UC, 3.2 apparently is timelined for October, and I didn't even hear that at the UC necessarily. I finally found that on a blog
That's
post.
RTS Pro
Yeah.
3.2.
What did I say?
You just said 3.2.
3.2.
Oh.
I guess we all know. But
Yeah, and, yeah.
In ARC view, people, we're all well past that.
yeah.
So I don't know. It's
Here's the single most important thing. The third bullet point. Third, mind you, for the ArcGIS Online announcements, I'm going to read it as is. There's now a streamlined administrator experience for deleting a member. That's it. It's the entire bullet point.
That means so much.
It does.
it kind of does.
If you are an
It's
administrator, I mean,
huge.
for the vast majority, it won't matter. But if you are an organization administrator, yes.
Oh my goodness, it's so important. And I will not go on a rant, too much rant on why not before now? I mean,
Yes.
how hard was it anyway?
Well, I think the answer is not easy. So
I mean,
I don't want
Anyway,
to hear about your
okay.
items. Just delete.
I don't
well,
care.
but the thing that makes it easier is that now whenever you go to delete, it's going to ask where do you want to move their items.
Which is fine. That's how hard was that to say?
I know. That's right. Before.
And they would go, there's stuff. And you go, cool. Ask me to do something with the stuff. Please.
Yes.
I'm begging you. I will tell you, stick it over there. It'll be good. But now we have that, which is awesome.
Yes. That is in fact awesome.
I think one of the things that we won't see just yet is the 3D base map of the world. I assume that's coming with 3.2, or maybe it's rolling out as part of the last ArcGIS Online release, which was, 3 weeks ago? Somewhere in there, somewhere between October and 3 weeks ago, there will be something about 3D tiles of the world. Well, maybe they're not to the 3D tiles yet, but at least a 3D base map of the world.
Yeah, I don't think they're doing tiles. I think they're actually...
Well, no, 3D tiles are coming in a future version. So that's a separate thing.
separate things. Yeah, I think the 3D base maps are actually like 10s or something. I mean, it's kind of... Or maybe it's... I don't know.
I don't know what it is, but it is going to be available, and that's kind of exciting because it may not be the highest resolution that you can get with your own data, but if you're just starting in an area, being able to start with some level of 3D data, even if it's just, the 10 with an image draped across it, that's something.
That's pretty impressive. It's not quite as impressive as metadata editor.
Ooh, what's that? Wait,
I don't know.
Is that different from the current metadata editor?
I don't know, but it's in beta, and it's looking for user feedback.
Oh, cool.
And I know you're all just dying to give user feedback on the metadata editor.
You can sign up to be, contacted to be someone that they're like, hey, is anyone interested? They've got a little survey. You fill it out. They'll contact you and ask you for feedback on things.
Well, I think there is a beta.esri.com. I'm checking the URL now to make sure I'm not, maybe it doesn't exist. Oh, earlyadopter.esri.com. So you can, go in and sign up for betas.
Yeah, like if you want to give feedback on the metadata editor, you could sign up for the betas and get feedback on editing metadata.
It's very important. And for
It
some
is
people, we
very
enjoy
important.
it. So,
And then this one, I'm actually interested in data pipelines. I'm kind of curious about that. That's kind of neat. And that one, I would actually sign into non-facetiously. I would, want to know because what the term evokes gets me excited. Now, whether the reality matches the term, who knows? But
Yeah.
that's cool.
So I guess our topic this week became discussion / grumbling / pie in the sky things related to the UC.
Yeah, but also too, I mean, I kind of miss being there. So,
Yeah.
So, part of it too is, and this is the time of year. So the UC always coincides, and since we don't get to go anymore, with that time of year for those of us as educators who are thinking about how we're going to do our classes in the upcoming semester, like what's been changing, what did we learn in the past year? And so, sometimes those things are part of how we filter new things we're hearing and thinking about how we can actually and get, because my hardest thing is I get excited about some of the stuff I see, and then I'm like, yeah, but I can't use it now. It's going to be a year or more before I can actually, incorporate that into it, just because of the realities of the structures at the place where I am. So
We're not going to upgrade in the middle of the semester.
Correct.
We're going to wait until at least the spring semester for anything that has to do with 3.2. So
Yeah.
we
Speaking of
deal
realities.
with the ArcGIS Online updates
Yeah.
because we don't have a choice.
So sometimes that colors, but still, I do miss the excitement but I do think like some of my comments were the fact that we do get excited about the new things, but the reality is in the adoption kind of cycle, which we already know, is that not everybody can be there with us for quite a while, and so a lot of times we are gonna, as professionals, have to help out those who are a little bit further back and kind of still keep those skill sets and those expectations sometimes have to be a little tempered.
Yeah. Frank, what were you going to say?
Speaking of realities, there's ArcGIS Reality, which, they talked a little bit about, and I'm eager to play with. So that's kind of cool.
Is that new this year?
Yes, no. It's
Yeah.
like, I don't think it was, I'm sure they talked about it, because everybody tends to talk about things for years before, but I think it's been out for months in some form or fashion. But, I kind of felt like this was what's the,
Everybody should be expecting it. The general rollout.
yeah. And so, it's getting, like Sue said, it may be a few months before I can get my hands around it, play with it, but I'm kind of excited by that. That's, again, the word may connote more than the reality, but no pun intended, but we'll see.
So the virtual attendance was $99 compared to the over 2,000 for the in-person conference for the week. It doesn't totally capture the feeling of being there. I don't think anything can. But I've been enjoying my virtual experience, especially when I couple it with watching what everyone's doing that's actually there and people sending me pictures and keeping up on social media.
And of course, if you do have a site license with seats and you don't have everybody with seats going, and actually I'm not sure if you have to use one of your in-person seats or not, but if you do have them, then you can do it for free. So the $99 isn't even there if you're in an organization that has an ongoing subscription. So you can go over and try to log in with your account and then drop in your organization number and see if it lets you in for free. And I assume, the first day is definitely recorded. I haven't looked at today's. Have you seen if any of this morning's were recorded?
They only announced this morning yesterday's. So
Yeah.
I suspect that anything that was recorded today would be announced tomorrow.
Okay.
So, but I haven't looked, to be honest with you. I was rather busy doing work at work.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was asking Barb, but
The ones I saw were the live sessions.
Yeah.
So I assume they'll be recorded and then released.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm banking on because I'm teaching. So all the morning sessions are covered by my class time. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes. Okay. Are there any events that we're interested in for the fall
For the fall?
or late summer?
No, not so much for late summer. In the fall, I can't remember. JSP Pro is late
And of course,
August.
applied geography, whatever its new name
Well,
is.
let's start with GIS Pro, which is in Columbus. Is that right?
Yeah, that's in Columbus, October 16th to the 19th.
Oh, that's later than normal.
I always thought it was September. So, but if you've never been to GIS Pro and you're anywhere near Columbus, go. It's pretty cool. Columbus is okay, fine, but GIS Pro is a lot of fun.
The Applied Geography Conference, as Sue started to talk about, is taking place in Pittsburgh, and it's going to be in October in person. And I'm a little bit, I don't know how I feel about it because I like those conferences where you have the choice of going in person or doing it online. And so this year they're going straight back to in person. So straight from completely online to straight to completely in person. That'll be October 25th to the 28th in Pittsburgh. While GIS Pro abstracts, I think, are past due, Applied Geography Conference, I think the abstracts are due August or September. Let's see. Call for sessions August 13th is, abstracts. So individual abstracts are September 13th. So if you're doing a session, August 13th, individual papers or posters, September 13th. But those are open now.
And if you're looking for info, they've rebranded as AGX as opposed to just Applied Geography. And I don't know what the AGX stands for. But
it means Applied Geography Experience, but just it was their way to kind of open up to be more than just a conference. Because, of course, it's a journal, it's a conference, it's other things. But, yeah, it's still under appgeogconf.org.
Yeah. So but a lot of the materials they've been sending me were, hey, we're AGX now. So.
Yeah. I think
Barbara and I will try to go to that. Maybe we'll get some content for the podcast.
Yeah, it's very close by for you guys.
Yeah, we can go up there and back in a day. So
that's right. Yeah, or stay overnight and do some other stuff.
Unfortunately, we have a puppy dog now, so, you know.
And other conferences, all the regional AAG conferences are in the fall, kind of starting in September and going, I think usually the Southeastern is the last one, the week of Thanksgiving. So you can look at those as well for your region.
And FOSS4G, that's in Baltimore in October.
Wow, that's kind of, is that North America or is that the international FOSS4G?
FOSS4G North America, okay. October 23rd through 25th.
Okay.
I was trying to think, isn't this around the time of year or shortly after for State of the Map as well?
Yeah. Right now, yeah. That's why I was wondering, because usually the international FOSS4G is usually July, August as well. So, of course, if you'd like us to add your event to the podcast, send us an email to podcast@veryspatial.com.
If you'd like to reach us individually, I can be reached at sue@veryspatial.com.
I'm Barb at veryspatial.com.
You can reach me at frank@veryspatial.com. And yes, I did join Threads.
I'm thinking about it.
I thought you didn't already do it?
First I found out that you had to use the mobile app, and I was trying to do it for my desktop because that's where I read all my feeds. Oh. So I have, in fact, downloaded the app. But then I couldn't remember my password for Instagram. And I'm signed into Instagram on my desktop, so I don't have to worry about it there. So that means I forgot it. So I'll have to reset my password.
I'm available at Kinda Spatial, not at Twitter, but most other places. And I guess I'm going to go with Threadless because I have more followers on Threadless than I ever did on Mastodon.
I think it's just Threads.
Threads. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Threadless
Threadless is cool.
Yeah. If you're looking for really cool T-shirts, prints, bags, I don't even know I wonder if they still have the Chicago store. But yeah, Threadless is a great. No advertising here.
Yeah.
But Threads, yeah. But apparently, Threads is essentially going to be a Mastodon instance, so that you can interact with people on Threads through other Mastodon. Never mind. We'll see how it goes. What they say they're going to do and what they will do as Meta, we don't know.
As always,
we're the folks from VerySpatial.
Thanks for listening.
And we'll see you in a couple weeks, which, by the way, will be our 18th anniversary. Or 18th anniversary, if you will.
No. 18? No way.
18.